Welcome back, everybody. I am stoked to be back. Sorry, it's been had a little time off, but you got to think of it like a TV sitcom. You know, the best shows, they go through their seasons, they have a few months off. My best show, had the season and took some time off, and we're back for, I guess you could say, season 2. But I'm really excited to be back. One of the reasons I had a absence was just change companies. So went over to a new company, been getting adapt with everything, a lot of changes, a lot of great stuff going on in my personal life, but that's for another time. But we have some great content that are going to be coming up in the next few episodes. Today, though, wanted to talk about open houses. And I could not have thought of anybody better to be on today's episode than my dad, Alex Gandel. And he's been selling real estate, for 39 years now. But he still does open houses, usually at least one a weekend. So, Alex, thanks for being here today.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me here.
So why do you still do open houses? I mean, you've been selling for a long time. You got a lot of clients. You're pretty busy. Why do you still do open houses, and why not just take it back, tone back a little bit?
Well, excuse me. There's several reasons that I still do them. It's kind of like it's part of my work habit or my work ethic, I guess we could call it. But when I started in the real estate business all those years ago, I didn't really know anybody, so I had to figure out a way to meet people. And back in 1980, when I began my career at the ripe old age of 20, just shy of 21, I found it was a great way to meet people. I mean, the real estate business was completely different then because the realtors had all the information. There was no internet or anything like that. So people came to open houses that were looking to buy houses, and it gave them an opportunity to meet real estate people, which is still part of the reason why I do it today. Your first job when you have an open house is to try to sell the house, because that's what the seller has asked you to do, and that's your job. That's your fiduciary responsibility to the seller. However, sometimes people are out shopping for a realtor, and they like to see how they conduct an open house, because they might be looking to for a realtor to represent them in the sale of their home. So that's a benefit to the realtor that works the open house correctly, if in fact they meet somebody like that. Obviously, when you're at the open house, it's important that you know that not only the house itself but the area, and so you can intelligently speak to the people, especially if they're interested in the property. They're going to want to know about the schools, potentially if they have children, maybe a little bit about the neighbors, which of course you can always ask the seller that. They always ask, why are they selling? A lot of things like that. So it's important to be prepared. But I also began what's known as farming about 10 or 12 years into my career, and I currently farm just right at 3,000 houses very consistently. And when you're sitting at open house in your farm, you better know the inventory of your farm, whether they're your listings or not, because again, you're there to make that seller's house shine. And if you know the other properties and you can intelligently and succinctly compare them to the other properties that they're competing with within the development, that's a double benefit. Number one, you get to meet people within your farm, and number two, you get to show your skill set with regards to how you represent a seller's home. So it's a very positive thing.
Okay. So it's just been a part of your working persona your whole career. Mm-hmm. It's just who you are, basically.
Well, you got to be a people person in this business, and sometimes you have open houses where there's so many people there you can't even talk to anybody because you're busy watching everybody. Or I remember one open house, it was a big open house, and I was there with your mom, actually, and we must have had 10 or 12 people in the house at the same time. So I just kind of said, hey, everybody, hang on one second. I kind of got them all together to explain about the property, why the seller was selling, what the competition was in the neighborhood, and so on. And, we're here to help you and have fun here, and please don't hesitate to ask any questions, kind of thing. That was the only way I could manage to communicate.
You mentioned earlier that in today's real estate world, buyers have so much more information compared to what they did when you started.
Mm-hmm.
Internet,
Sure.
Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, all that fun stuff. So why, if a buyer has all that information, can see all the photos online, why is it still beneficial for a seller to have an open house, in your opinion?
Well, let's compare that to the buyer that goes online and buys a sweater, and it shows up and it's not what they expected it to be. It's that basic. They're looking at pictures, there's no way for them to understand the flow of the house. And just the other day, we had a showing at one of our listings, and I was there because it's an appointment-only showing, and the house was perfect for the family. It was the perfect house for them, except for one thing: the kitchen did not open to the family room, and they had 2 young children. And regardless of the fact that everything about it, including the price, by the way, was beyond what they expected it to be, Mrs. Buyer simply said, "No, there's no way I can do this because I can't see my kids while I'm cooking." And that's that. That's nothing they could see online. I mean, if there was a floor plan online, they can see the stamp of it, but they can't understand the flow or the feel of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reality of it. It's still, you have to touch it and see it. I mean, it's the family's nest.
I gotcha. And personally, from what I'm seeing, buyers nowadays are actually just going to the open houses themselves. Mm-hmm. They're not working with an agent. They're trying to just shop around on their own and see what's going on. And I want to talk about that a little bit later. But I've even had clients that say, "Hey, we're just going to go check out open houses this weekend. Don't worry about, coming or meeting with us if you want to, great. Don't worry about trying to, if we're not able to see property over the week, fine. We'll just go during the open houses. We don't have any issue with that." Okay, if that's what you guys want to do. But buyers still are really into going to open houses and things like that. So obviously open houses are still beneficial. Get people in and signing. Believe it or not, there's still a lot of people who read and find signs to go into open houses. They had no idea about certain neighborhoods or how much prices were, things like that. Mm-hmm. So getting people over, like you said, learning about the neighborhood and everything like that. On the flip side of that, though, open houses can be dangerous for a seller. What do you do to help protect the seller and make sure, hey, you're going to have a bunch of random people in your house? I understand it's something that could be a nervous situation. How do you combat that and tell them it'll all work out? What do you do to make the seller feel a little bit more at ease?
Well, some sellers simply don't want open houses, and that's completely fine. I understand that and respect that. They just don't. They only want qualified buyers to come through their home. So they don't care if they have to have 50, groups of people come through to get a buyer. If they just have one, they're fine with that. Depending upon the size of the house and the layout, we do multiple agents in these homes because, you need somebody downstairs. There's typically an office downstairs somewhere where there could be private information. And then, of course, you need somebody upstairs
for
to make
2-story homes.
Right. Or if it's a big single story, sometimes we have these single stories that are 3,600, 4,000 square feet. And, you have to have somebody on each end to manage the security of it. But in all these years, thankfully, there really has never been a challenge with that, other than the fact that, I've had maybe 5 instances in 39 years where I've actually had people leave because they didn't belong there. I mean, they were
like you asked them you kicked them out,
right?
Type deal. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I caught somebody one day opening a dresser drawer. I said, "You have to leave now."
And they just took off.
Oh, they were so embarrassed that they got caught. It was crazy.
Good for you.
There was a time where I wasn't impacted by this, but there was a guy that said he was going. This was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. He was going to open houses to look for his parents. May I use the restroom? And he was going in everyone's restrooms and rifling through looking for drugs. And the next weekend, he tried it again. But word had gotten out around here. There was
the real estate community.
Yeah, correct. There was a an announcement at the MLS meeting, and a description of the guy was passed along, and he went into a house and asked to use the restroom, and the realtor let him in the restroom, called 911, and the police were standing there when he walked out of the restroom, and because he was in there for quite a long time, and he had all kinds of drugs that he had taken from the medicine cabinet.
Crazy.
So, but that was, I mean, again, in 39 years, that's like the only time that's ever happened. So, and for me, that's thousands of open houses. But for the seller's protection, when I meet with my sellers, as you know, I have them sign and acknowledge a document that we've created here that explains to them the security. It has to do with open houses. It has to do with showings. It has to do with, if someone just rings your doorbell and says, "Hey, I don't have a realtor and I want to see your house," don't let them in. They need to make an appointment, that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, everyone's aware we live in kind of a whacked out, crazy world now. This is not the old Oak Elm and Maple Streets of the 50s and the early 60s. So it's just about awareness, and thankfully in Simi Valley we don't have the types of issues that they have potentially in other areas. But ironically, if you ever read the LA Times real estate section on Saturday, there's these massive ads there where they have open houses on these multi-gazillion-dollar mansions in Beverly Hills and Studio City and Toluca Lake and everywhere, and Westlake and North Ranch and whatever, and they're doing open houses on those homes. So it's if it's working, and those are people that have obviously a substantial amount of money typically. Mm-hmm. So if they're willing to have open houses, why wouldn't an average Joe, unless it's just something they're completely against? It only takes one person to buy the house. And a month ago, Memorial Day weekend, I sat at a vacant house open for 2 hours in a gated community. I was there for 2 hours. I had 2 people come through. One person I just simply didn't understand their language. They weren't speaking English, and I didn't understand them, but I could tell they liked the house, and they told me they had a realtor. And about 2 hours later, I got a phone call from this realtor, and he said, "I'm going to email you over an offer." So they saw the house was advertised. He was busy. They were living in temporary housing in the valley. They wanted to be in the east end of Simi Valley. It was within the price range. And so on Tuesday, we opened escrow, the day after Memorial Day, and I sat it open on a Saturday.
Just from the buyer coming in on a random Saturday, Memorial weekend.
On a rainy, random Memorial Day Saturday. So you just never know.
Never know. I usually just wear super short sleeve shirts. Gun show comes out, nobody's messing with me.
Yeah.
So you mentioned though the buyer. They just came in. That's actually one of the nicer things about open houses. Again, buyers could go in freely, look at a home, and not have to feel rushed or anything. Maybe there's a few people in there. I've had clients see open houses that want to go back for a private showing, but there's a lot of times buyers they don't want to go make the appointment. They'll just go freely and check it out. The downside to that for the buyer is, why wait for the open house though?
Right.
What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think if somebody is looking for a specific type of home and it becomes available, there's no reason to wait for the open house, because if it's that quote hot of a property, the open house, by the time they get there could already be multiple offers on the house, and that happened earlier this year as well. These other realtors' clients came through an open house that I had. The people that ended up buying the house saw it the day it came on the market. It was broker loaded into the multiple listing service first thing in the morning. They were there that afternoon with their agent. That was on a Friday. We had the open house on Saturday. They came through on Saturday at the open house. I had an offer in my hands before the open house was over, non-contingent, within $5,000 of what the seller's goal was, so it was easy to put the deal together for the seller and the buyer. But this other buyer came in, they had a house they had to sell, it was not on the market. I explained to them that we had received an offer on the property that was non-contingent. I had seen them in and out of open houses for the last probably year. They've been looking for a house. And they really wanted to view. This house had a view, and I said, well, why don't you got to get your house up for sale. But I directed them to a different listing I had where I knew the seller would consider the contingency, provided that when they listed their house with their agent, who happened to be their niece, that they priced it correctly. So they called their niece from the open house. I called the seller. They met the niece over at the house, which was on Indian Hills Drive. And anyway, they ended up buying the house. They put their house up for sale. They sold it within a week, and everybody moved within maybe 40 days.
Just from going to an open house.
Well, they learned about other inventory that they weren't aware of. And I knew they didn't have a chance to buy my client's house, so it was a waste of their time to even try.
One of the other things, too, with waiting for open houses, personally, I've sold many listings that said, hey, no showing till first open house.
Right.
And I've had personal relationships with those agents, and I call them up and say, hey, can I show the listing? I know you're not going to show until the first open house, but hey, I got a very qualified client. You know me. You know we're going to make the deal happen if they like it. I've sold multiple homes that way, and the agent told me there were so many other people who were not happy about it. He said, you know what, Brad did reach out, and I know Brad and I trust Brad, and he didn't mess around with it. They gave us an offer that we wanted, and kudos to my client for listening as well and doing the right thing. And we made the deal happen. They opened escrow with nobody else seeing the property.
Right, and the thing about that comment is that that's why it's important for a buyer to connect themselves with a really top-notch agent, because sometimes that reputation of that person that's representing them can open a door that otherwise wouldn't be open.
That was actually one of the most interesting questions I got at a listing appointment was the seller actually asked me, what's your relationship with some other agents?
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think I got a good relationship with everybody. I don't have any bad blood or burn bridges or any of that stuff. So I'm all about the client. But yeah, I never thought that would be a question. And after making one of those deals happen, yeah, I get it. I understand how important it is to have a good relationship with an agent, and it will help benefit your client. So you've been doing it quite a long time. You've seen a lot of crazy stuff. You got any good stories or anything you would like to share? Open house stories.
Sure. So one that comes to mind was I had an open house on a newer property that was roughly 2,500 square feet. It was a two-story. And I did not have anybody to help me that day, but the seller had been transferred. They wanted to have an open house, and I said, okay, I'll do it on my own. I'll do the best I can for you. And there was a lot of people there. It was a beautiful home. Anyway, I opened the door for somebody. They had a probably 4 or 5-year-old child with them. The kid takes off, goes flying through the house, opens the back door, and jumps in the pool. So everybody thinks it's hilarious, right? So they want a towel. So I've got to go find a towel for this child because they still want to see the house. So I go find a towel, and they dry him off. Next thing you know, he comes in. He goes flying up the stairs. He goes into this little girl's room. And she had a gigantic dollhouse there that her dad made for her with furniture and everything, all handmade stuff. And he starts rummaging through all these things, and he's throwing these items that are in this dollhouse around the room. And the parents just think it's hilarious. And I'm like, you know what? You need to leave, and you need to leave now. And they were very upset with me. And I said, your child is fully out of control. You're not welcome in this property. You need to take your son, and you need to leave now. There was another woman standing there, and they were giving me pushback. They wanted the owner's name, Brian Troop, so I gave him the name. They wanted his number. I gave him his number. I said, I'll call him right now if you'd like, from outside. You need to leave now. So the third time I told them. They pushed back again. So this woman standing there says, this gentleman just politely has told you to leave because your kid's a total maniac out of control. And by now, we're in the hallway, and we're at the top of the stairs, and there's probably 10, 12 people watching this whole thing unfold. I was pretty calm. I just needed them to leave. So they're like, they were like, we're reporting you to the Department of Real Estate, whatever. I said, you can do whatever you want. You just need to leave right now. And I've got to clean this mess up and explain what happened to my seller. And the lady whips out a sheriff's badge. And she said, if you don't leave, I'm going to place you under arrest right now. So they flew out of the house. The lady looked at me and she said, I cannot believe how calm you handle that. Everybody was applauding at the bottom of the stairs. It was pretty funny. These people were bright red. And I got a phone call from the lady with the badge, the sheriff, maybe a week later. And she introduced herself, and she said, I was so impressed with how you handled that situation. And I said, well, you handled it better than I did because you got him to leave. And she started laughing and she said, when can you come over? We're going to be moving and I want you to sell our house and find us another one.
That's so funny.
So that's what happened with that
I've
story.
never heard of that one. You've told me some pretty good ones, which I don't know if it's quite G-rated enough for this. But yeah, that's the first one I heard.
Yeah, the maniac kid in the pool.
That's pretty funny. When did that happen?
Probably about 2011 or 12.
Oh, so that wasn't too long ago.
No.
Yeah, I got a good one. Went out the night before, had a lot of fun. Vacant open houses, a townhome that you had. This is right when I started, so I was doing open houses every Saturday and Sunday. So I was doing 2 a week. And, oh, man, I was hurt. Could not get anybody in the house. It was vacant. And it was the stairs that goes up one way. That has the flat part, turns around and goes up the other side.
Yeah.
I ended up locking the front door because people, in case they came in or if they rang the doorbell, I could wake up. I fell asleep for 45 minutes on the flat part of the stairwell, and then I had a listing appointment right after. I felt so much better. I actually went and got the listing.
Good for you.
So that's one of my favorite ones.
Well, just don't go out carousing, the night before an open house.
Learn my lesson. Don't do it. The one last thing I do want to touch on is when buyers are when people come into the open house, 99% of the people are amazing. The only thing, for the ones who are listening, when we're there, realtors, just say hi to us. There's some who just are completely cold, kind of shun the agent. They're just there. We're there providing a service. The seller is nice enough to let people come into their house. Just say hi to us. I've had people come in and actually, first thing they ask me, so what kind of food are you serving today? Mm-hmm. And I told them there's a McDonald's around the corner. Feel free to help yourself.
Right. Well, I've had people want to bring their dogs in, and
and they're walking them, and right. I completely understand.
They're not carrying them; they're walking them, and that's just not right. I sometimes, and it's a lot more frequent now than it used to be. We have a lot of listings where the sellers would like you to take your shoes off or wear booties, and that's typically. It's because like in our house, I'm not allowed to wear shoes. We don't wear shoes upstairs in our house because that's the only carpet in the house, and I totally respect that. But if someone comes in and they say, "Well, I want to see it. I'm just in a hurry, and just let me run in." Well, no, you need to wear the booties. That's what the sellers requested, and they may not like that very much. But as an agent, you have to do what your seller has asked you to do.
And for the other people, just respect the rules of the house. Mm-hmm. It's like if you were to go to your friend's house and they have rules. Just respect the rules. That's all I ask. That's the only thing I wanted to touch on that real quick.
It's a great tool for a seller. Open houses are a great opportunity to sell your house because, even if it is your neighbor that comes in, neighbors like to pick neighbors. And they may tell their friend about
friends,
the house,
family, all the time.
Right.
Are always looking.
There's nothing wrong with a, quote, looky-loo neighbor because they're the ones that are going to work hard to sell your house to somebody that they want to live in their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another spin benefit that it's real, it's tangible, it's nothing. It does happen. There's no question about it.
Well, I appreciate you joining us today, and
thanks
for all your expertise. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And like I said, I'm glad to be back, and we got some really good content coming up in the next few episodes. So stay tuned, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.